Hi, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Attacking Free podcast Transfer Talk with your hosts, myself, Jan from Yannick and Chelsea, and my Austrian brethren, Jimmy and Andy. We're back today to talk about transfers, funnily enough. I'll be taking the reins in part one. So if you're not familiar with the format, our podcasts are split down into two parts, and you can find part one and part two on our respective podcast. I'll say I don't want to say platforms. I'll just say where you find our podcast. So, for example, part one's going to be a Yannick on Chelsea, and to get to part two, you just mosey on over to the Attacking Two podcast, which I will link in the description. Sub to these guys and find part two, and this way you get to find additional great content across two excellent Chelsea podcasts. Right, so there's been a lot going on in a very short amount of time with Chelsea. And I think a good place to start is with strikers. Now, if you haven't heard, we did a great podcast discussing the potential addition of Gonzalo Higuain to Chelsea and highly likely exit of Alvaro Morata. Now, I want to bring one of my co-hosts in to talk about if we think Higuain might happen, because it did look like it may have gone cold. But Jimmy, do you think we're going to see the Argentinian at our club again, or rather, is the rumor make sense?
It's a very tough question to answer at the moment. I mean, that it seems as if his brother was in London today, who's
That's right, yeah.
same time his agent. But you have contradicting sources like Di Marzio continually saying that no, it's not that easy, he won't come. Then there are others like Mercato or Gazzetta dello Sport that say it will happen. We don't know. It's a very tricky one to predict whether that will take place. It does have this kind of vibe to it that seems more likely than, say, I don't know, Jamie Vardy or Callum Wilson, especially the latter because of that price tag. But if he does come, we already spoke about the advantages, the pros and cons, but it does seem like the only one really viable choice at the moment. There aren't really that many others. So,
well, when that's and when that's your viable choice, it does sort of that's testament to, I don't want to say desperate times for Chelsea, Andy, but like Jimmy was saying, it does look like there's conflicting reports. Like Jimmy said, his brother was in London. We will get a chance to talk about Callum Wilson. I think with Jamie Vardy, we can touch on him as well. But what do you think about Higuain? I mean, we have discussed him before, Andy. But do you see him as the most likely addition?
I'm not so sure because the signs seem to go in a different direction. I think 1 or 2 days ago, I was almost certainly sure that Higuain would join Chelsea, at least on a short-term loan. Now, I'm not so sure because also Michy Batshuayi came back from loan. Looks likely that he is going to be loaned out again, but maybe not so. And Michy Batshuayi could do a job for half a season. So I'm not so sure. And also he's of course the cheapest version of maybe settling our season. No one wants to spend, I think, 50 million on Callum Wilson. That's ludicrous money. And Higuain is not cheap on loan even. So what can we do at this moment in time?
Yeah, so that's interesting. I do want to touch on Michy Batshuayi. So sort of to round up with Higuain, it is up in the air. We can only speculate as other Chelsea fans can at the moment. I think he is keen to come to the club due to what's going on at Milan. And obviously, we all know Sarri would be gagging to get him at Chelsea. So although the player and manager wants it, the club will be highly reluctant. That sentiment being led by Granovskaya, we'd imagine she would not be keen with that at all. I mean, even with expensive loans and stuff. So, ladies and gentlemen, go back and listen to our podcast when we discussed Gonzalo Higuain, because we did go into it in a lot of detail. And if this transfer does happen, which it could, then if you want our opinions and a bit of the stats and the numbers, then that podcast has a lot of prevalent the pieces of information in. All right, so moving on, just quickly, Jimmy did mention Jamie Vardy. I wrote on Twitter. I think I commented on it might have been your tweet, Jimmy. I can't remember, but someone mentioned him, and I said how purely on the basis of mentality, he's the opposite of Alvaro Morata. He doesn't flop about. He knows how to buy a pen. We all know that, but he doesn't flop about. He doesn't have a go at the refs. He's very canny. He knows the league. He's quick and he's clinical. He's just the opposite. He might not be as like twinkle toes as Morata when he fancies it, but he's just the opposite from a little bitch. Do you know what I mean? He knows the league. He doesn't care if he doesn't get a chance for 89 minutes because he will bury it in the 90th, and he won't argue with like centre backs. He'll just get on with it. But again, he's old. He's a counter-attacking player. So I want to talk about Michy Batshuayi in just a second. But would you boys agree with me? And yes or no for Jamie Vardy? Are you with me on the no, both of you? And
I would go for a no.
Yeah.
I like the guy, but just not for Chelsea. I think the most crucial thing is he needs spaces, and spaces is something you don't get with Chelsea, especially with the brand of football we play.
We're already all up there, yeah.
Then the second thing is he likes to drift in from the left channel, as does Eden Hazard. So they would constantly be on their case to who gets to play there. And just a flat no from me.
Jimmy, are you of the same inclination?
Yeah, I mean, if we're not just going to think about the basic style of how Leicester and Chelsea play, that's completely different. Also, stats on his side. I'm currently writing an article for the Chelsea Echo, plugging it here, where I'm actually comparing Higuain to Vardy and Wilson, and both the stats, a lot of things that speak against Higuain, but if in one of his worst seasons he can still best the both of them,
interesting,
that style of play that he has, then that does say a lot. We know about Callum Wilson, but also Jamie Vardy, as Andy said, he doesn't fit the style of play we are currently practicing. So
Wilson,
no, me as well.
Good info there. Yeah, I like a sort of preface the beginning of that segment. For very much me, it was a sort of performance mentality thing. How we've also wound up with how Morata's head goes and how he's sort of that petulant little sort of worse. That he's just the opposite of that. But I agree with you. It's not the right choice. We will move on to Batshuayi. So let's talk about Callum Wilson. It looks like you're a good person to talk to in this instance, Jimmy, about comparing stats if you're doing a write-up on it. But just want to give my 2 cents quickly. And I've said this to you boys before. I've got this sort of romantic sort of view of loving it to work out at Chelsea for Wilson. Obviously, 50 million is just a dumb amount of money. 30, they should have been happy. That would have seemed like loads for a club like Bournemouth to offload a striker that's not an absolute wonder. If he was 21 and he was doing like ridiculous things, then fair enough. But I have this sort of like really positive thing that he's a good age. He's English. He can score a goal. He's got his England call up. He scored 2 hat tricks in the time he's played for Bournemouth, where he has been in and out of the team. But when he does come in, he looks really good in spells. He can convert penalties. He's fast on the break. I know Eddie Howe studied Sarri's Empoli, so there's probably elements of each other's coaching that would reflect similarly to their players respectively. And I just have this, again, it might be just me being too positive and dreamy, but the reality is, even though he's got a good goal record in the Premier League, and in a way, you could be like, that's a safer purchase than buying a Galactico like Morata, which then doesn't look like a safe purchase. Wilson's shown, I can score goals in the Premier League in a side that ultimately creates less chances than Chelsea FC. See what happens if you put me in Chelsea FC. But yes, he's not amazing, and yes, he's got a terrible injury record. So I'll start with you, Jimmy, seeing as though you've been doing some comparative work. What are your... I'm going to put words in your mouth, but he's too expensive, isn't he?
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, for that kind of money, it's just ludicrous. You can't buy him for that 50 mil. There even been those reports. I mean, I don't believe them, but that said that it would be even more, which is even more ridiculous. But the thing is, he definitely doesn't have a bad goal scoring record, like 9 goals in 20 games. Seems like it's quite decent, but Higuain now, in this case, he bests him in actually every department. So, especially in the attacking game, I mean, Higuain dribbles more successful dribbles per game. He shoots more per game. His shots are more on goal per game. His pass accuracy compared to Wilson is far better. Wilson's like 65%. Which is, I know you can't necessarily compare Bournemouth and Milan, but you have to think about it like this, that Milan has been very dysfunctional itself. Hasn't been creating a lot of chances. Nevertheless, Higuain has been making those chances for himself. While Eddie Howe doesn't necessarily set them up defensively himself. You know, this is an attacking team. Even if they are going up against big opposition, they try to attack. So Callum Wilson he's very wasteful in front of goal. That's not Higuain. I mean, he does also miss a fair share, but at least his shots go on goal. He tries, and he doesn't miscontrol the ball that often as, for example, Wilson, who miscontrols the ball considerably more often.
Interesting.
Now, if you compare that to Chelsea's current strikers, then what you can see with the stats is that Wilson is, unfortunately, terribly reminiscent of a certain Spanish striker that we already have on our books, stats-wise. And while he has scored a few goals more than Morata, you know, that's not too much of an accomplishment at this point.
Sure.
But the thing is, his passing is dreadful. You know, you would think it'd be better in a team which does also pass a lot with the ball at their feet, and it isn't that good. Higuain, the thing is, his stats just show why he's tailor-made for Maurizio Sarri's system. And while he isn't the best choice we can get, you know, what we would wish for, at the moment, I don't think we can get anyone better than Higuain. And I was against this transfer initially, but looking at the options and looking at the stats, and stats can be misleading, but they do give us something to hold on to, you know, something to imagine, how could it...
Tangible, yeah.
It doesn't look as if we can make a better choice than Gonzalo Higuain at the moment. From a homegrown point of view, Jamie Vardy and Callum Wilson, because we need homegrown players, because we have 8 at the moment and we're getting linked with 4 of them with moves away, which means we'd have an immense problem. We'd have to get someone in. But that does make sense from that point of view, but there are no homegrown English strikers. Otherwise, all we want to get linked to Andy Carroll and Peter Crouch again, but I hope not that any Chelsea fan wants that to happen. So it's a bit of a pick.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's interesting. Andy, so just to get some information, your opinion rather on Callum Wilson as well, but I think just to say and to reiterate, we've all spoken at length on Higuain on the previous pod, how we wouldn't, you know, it doesn't seem like an ideal transfer in terms of age, wages, cost, this, that, and the other. So Callum Wilson, the club, if they think it could work of his age, and, you know, we could give him a pay rise, that would seem amazing for him, but, you know, it wouldn't be breaking the bank at all for us, and he could sign a 5-6 year contract or whatever. What do you think about Callum Wilson? Do you think what Jimmy said all stands up, but could you see him developing in our side? And he's come back from 2 major injuries. He hasn't got a mental fragility like Morata, but do you think he could develop in Chelsea?
Well, listening to what Jimmy had to say, I thought very good points, well made. But I think on 1 or 2 points too harsh on Callum Wilson, like comparing him to Alvaro Morata in the style of play. Maybe from a mentality standpoint, absolutely not. Looking at how he came through the ranks, playing for Coventry City for the majority of his career, having loans to non-league, very much is a reminder of me, telling me, all right, he has maybe some Jamie Vardy in himself, like a crafter's mentality.
Yeah.
And that is something I rate. Of course, a crafter's mentality can't make up for bad passing in a game, especially when you need a good pass up front with Sarri ball. That's for sure. but I think he will, coming back from 2 injuries, you've said it, I think with how he hit the ground running this season, also providing 6 assists, and this maybe is an argument against he's a bad passer. Alvaro Morata never in his career had 6 assists to his name in the full season, never mind the half of a season. So maybe he's worth a shout, but 50 million is too much, I think. But also, while Jimmy was saying that, when a striker, like a foreign striker in the Italian or Spanish league, was having or is having this kind of numbers to his name, we are also talking about numbers of 50 million or plus. Belotti was an example. He's kind of the same age, had a good season, and we were talking about these kind of numbers. So why shouldn't we talking about these numbers with Callum Wilson when he has just extended his contract in summer until 2022? He's English, and he would make sense. And I think maybe he is a long-term solution for a second-string striker for us. And 50 million is the new 30 million from 2 years back. Yeah, we have to think about that.
That's true.
Just
go on, mate.
Say, because you mentioned about harsh about comparing Karen Wilson to Alvaro Morata, I explicitly said that I only compared him not on his mentality but on the stats.
No, that's true.
Stats don't lie. Yeah, I just said his stats are comparable to Alvaro Morata's. Not mentality. That is not something that.
No, that's and it's good. It's good that you highlighted it as well. One thing that Andy did say is the assists. He's got a lot of assists. Now, for a striker in Sarri's system, if he, Hazard's never scored. I don't know if it's changed now. Remember that ridiculous stat how he never scored with Morata on the pitch, but he'd do it with Giroud. Wilson looked like he could be a bit of a hybrid. If he's popped out 6 assists already, say he got another 6 in the season, so 12 assists to a season.
We don't need assists at the moment.
No, but what? Yeah. Goals. What I'm alluding to is if he scores X amount of goals, like 18 league goals, or maybe a bit more projected a bit more because he's in a Chelsea system that might afford him a better opportunity. What I'm saying is Hazard, that he likes someone to play on the ball because Hazard will obviously finish. And if he's getting balls put to him that he can finish, like Giroud was doing, I was going to make the comparison, then maybe he could be a hybrid of someone that's going to let Hazard continue his goal scoring form by assisting him, an assisting striker like Giroud is.
Okay.
But also getting the goals himself.
One point against that I have to say though is that while Higuain may not have always gotten as many assists as Callum Wilson, those 6, it does have to be said that Callum Wilson has less key passes per game than Higuain. Higuain puts in about 1 or 2 more key passes per game than Callum Wilson. So either the people he's playing with just don't convert those chances, and then that's not Higuain's fault. Or we can see that stats can be, ambiguous.
Sure.
I mean that, but from the stats here, Higuain can deliver assists, and at the moment, that's not the problem because we're creating enough chances. We need someone to finish them, so we don't need someone who can get 6 assists. We need someone who can score goals, and that is something that Pipita can do and will do. But if you compare Milan's chances created at the moment, it's dire.
I agree.
He's getting no service. So if one would lay that out to Higuain, who knows what he could do?
I'm with you. I think more to my point there wasn't for the comparison to Higuain. I was just talking about in isolation Wilson, if he's a feasible, because obviously the club are going to look at Wilson and say we could have you for 5 years. They're obviously not looking at Higuain and thinking that, are they? So if they think there's a chance it could work and that he could develop his game, I mean, we're all in agreement. It's dumb money, therefore it can't be done. But I'm working off a theoretical world here, where if he can do X amount of assists, develop his game, give Hazard those goals, act as like a bouncing block like Giroud, but also score some goals. And you made a good point about key passes, but I mean, I haven't seen what key passes we're developing at the moment as a team, but I know we're creating a lot of chances at the moment. And with that, you'd imagine comes key passes that aren't actually, finishing the stat as a key pass because there isn't a goal at the end of it. But I feel okay. So let's I think we do all agree that Higuain is the best option for us now, and that's probably because the coach thinks so, right? So,
can I put in a name for you too, where I want your opinions on, because I
Go
was totally against that initially, but it's like, as I heard his brother say today, he wants to leave, and I think Andy might already know who I'm alluding to. I've had second thoughts about this because he does seem to have a better all-round pack, and the age is more fitting. Marko Arnautovic. So
China.
His brother today said live on TalkSport he wants to leave. There's a good offer from China, though I think we could bet that because we would be able to give him Premier League football. Would he be a good choice? I mean, he offers a lot, and I'd like to first of all hear Andy's opinion, because I know you watch him as often as I do with, national team and all that.
Yeah, maybe China is an option for him, and the most likely option. But as I've heard that some China club that spent ludicrous money on Alexandre Pato before is about to getting completely taken apart and excluded from the league. China might not be a likely option for players no more, as it seems to be crumbling a bit over there. So he might be looking for a marquee transfer in his career because it's the last chance maybe for him. And Marko Arnautovic had an injury, came back and scored. I think since the day he came back, 3 or 4 goals. Yeah. That was like two weeks ago that he came back. He is a striker who doesn't need service, and if he gets service, he scores. He scores even without service. He does create chances on himself. He's a very good interplayer. Barely loses the ball. I think his interplay with Hazard would be great. Question marks over his attitude.
See, I'm going to shit all over this. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, but the question marks over his attitude. We knew him from the age of 20 when he had his crazy days. Seems to not be the case anymore, as he is a dad now and all that stuff. But he has a bit of an attitude about him, which I'm very happy to take, because I think there's not enough players with attitude at this club at the moment, and he's someone who can score you a dirty goal and win you a game when you need him to.
So before you shit over him, Yannick, I just want to say I agree with Andy totally.
I agree as well, generally.
He can pass the ball, he can hold up the ball, he's good in the air, he can shoot from out, he can convert from inside the penalty box, he can play on the wing, so he can drift in, he's 2 foot, he can score with both feet. He's only 29, if I'm not mistaken.
29, yeah.
And he's out to prove a point, and something that Marko Arnautovic can do is prove a point, and
That's perfect. That's a perfect
it just
segue,
sounds
though.
too perfect to...
No. Okay, so you what you just said there, Jimmy. He's if he fancies proving a point, he's really good. Perfect segue. If he fancies it, he's an amazing footballer, and not only is he an amazing footballer, he's a hard worker. He will there's games where he's man of the match, but he's just literally kind of like when Mitrovic fancies it. They'll run the game. They're very similar. They'll run everywhere. Arnautovic is like the ultimate B-Tech mercenary ever. Remember he like Shaqiri, oh yeah, I'm too fucking good for Stoke. Fair enough, you probably are. And then as soon as you join West Ham, he's giving it like the hammers to the Stoke fans when he played them. He'd do the exact same to Chelsea. He'd come to Chelsea, he'd go to the West Ham fans when we play them in the London derby, he'd be like, yeah, wankers, I'm at Chelsea now. Do you know what I mean? He's like the ultimate porn mercenary and if he fancies it, and if he doesn't fancy it, there's a lot of drama, there's a lot of controversy at Chelsea. If he gets pissed off of anyone in the hierarchy or anything like that, his head will drop, he'll get in a grump, and he won't be the good Arnautovic that we've just all been I've agreed with you guys that he is. He's just he's not like the professional team player that I'd want at my club. I'm not doubting his ability whatsoever. You're right, when he plays well, he's very good, and if he fancies it and he's in the mood, he'll do a really good performance. But if we took him on a 6 months loan and he fancied proving a point for 6 months, great. But I wouldn't want to give him a 4-year contract at Chelsea. Definitely not.
But look, Yannick, we got out of 3.5 years Diego Costa, or 3 years Diego Costa, we got our 2 Premier League wins. If Marko Arnautovic, who is, by the way, I think not on the level of Diego Costa, but
No.
nearly, if we can get any title out of him, let's say 18-month stint, I'm happy, and I think
Sure.
we can deliver that.
And I'd be, of course, absolutely happy as well. But Costa was a different kind of wanker though, as well. You know, and like it was the Jose Mourinho thing that brought him over. It's just I've just from watching Arnautovic float about the league and play when he fancies it. And I just wouldn't feel comfortable giving him like whatever a 3 or 4 year contract at 29 just before he's 30, grabbing those years. But look, boys, I do want to finish. We've talked about a lot of strikers. I want to finish on a point. Who knows who the fuck's coming or what would happen? But one thing we do know that is the Valencia coach has sent back Michy Batshuayi because he's been naff for him. We finished from both your opinions, but I'm going to run through some stuff quickly. Apparently they had an argument or some shit. He has been very poor for them in Valencia. I've watched him play a little bit as well. He'd been naff. It's kind of disappointing because after he had a really successful spell at Dortmund, he's like, I think he scored like 9 goals in 14 league games, which is superb for like a half season, or however long he was there for. He got an injury, didn't he, or something? That was it. But for that amount of time, coming to a new team, playing 14 games and scoring 9 league goals, debut, that's very, very good. And obviously at Chelsea, it was a bit of a funny one because his goals to minutes was really good in a lot of competitions. But before I get your guys' thoughts, we remember Batshuayi for being a happy-go-lucky sort of character, a good poacher. Apparently, he was a bit poor in training. That's why coaches don't like him, because he's all smiles, but there's not much going on between the ears. So Italian managers don't like people who can't retain information like that. But in 4 Premier League starts for us, he scored 7 goals. He did make loads of appearances, but remember Conte was literally putting him on in stoppage time. So there was times he'd come on and not touch the ball. And obviously that's racked up an appearance. And that happened a ludicrous amount of times. So I want to represent starts. So 7 goals in 4 starts. FA Cup, 6 appearances, 5 goals. League Cup, 6 appearances, 5 goals. He scored a winner in the Champions League away at Atletico Madrid, their first away win to an English club. He scored the winning goal that won us the Premier League. So he didn't have a problem coming on with doing something great, I don't think he's an amazing striker. I don't think he's probably an intelligent footballer, but he's a good poacher. 2 questions for both of you. I'll start with Andy. Do you think A, he could do a job for us, just say for the rest of the season, 6 months, and B, regardless to that, do you think he's going to go to another Premier League club, be it like Everton or Palace? Andy?
More difficult questions. I think Michy Batshuayi on normal confidence level could deliver something to us. I think would be even a good choice at this moment in time, because we can't acquire a good striker at this moment in time if it wasn't for Gonzalo Higuain. But on the confidence level he is at the moment, you kind of need. I think with the mentality he has got, you need 2 months to build him up, and it might be at this point. A shame that, as someone said it today, a shame that we didn't cut our losses when he had a decent loan at Dortmund, because he would have been quite decent money for us. I think the Spanish league was also not suited to him. Playing possession-based football is just not his style, I think. Guess what's waiting for him at Chelsea? Possession-based style. At least he's a finisher, and we need a finisher. So I would be happy to have him at the club for at least 6 months and maybe move him on then. He's not the Sarri player, in my opinion.
Okay, so would you say if Higuain can't come for whatever reason, and would you have him, rather than going for the English lads, you'd just play Batshuayi?
Yes.
Okay. Do you see him, and do you think it's likely, or do you think he's probably going to go to another loan straight away? Yes or no?
Probably a loan.
Okay.
I'd go loan.
All right, Jimmy, what are your thoughts on it, mate?
Yeah, I'm going to make this really short because I know we're already pressed for time here.
That's right. Yeah.
I agree with Andy. I think he could do a job. The possession based style, that's not his thing. We know that could be a problem. But I think he just needs to be given the confidence for once. He just needs to be given a run of games. And he's better than what we've got at the moment, and so might as well. I don't think he'll go to Crystal Palace. There were actually tweets from Palace fans going out that explained why, So maybe Everton. But I let's be honest, he'll be going out on loan. But I think it'd be great to have him here because if he can come from the bench and score a goal, that's something that our strikers can't do. So
yeah,
I wouldn't be against that.
Opposed to it. And, you know, obviously, I think because if his confidence has been knocked down a little bit, developing it from the bench, coming on, scoring a few goals like we've seen him do before for Chelsea. And I wouldn't go call him a cult hero, but he's not a hated figure by Chelsea fans. Not by a long shot. So we'd probably be happy to have him back. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, from Gonzalo Higuain to Jamie Vardy to Callum Wilson to Marco Arnautovic apparently and to Michy Batshuayi. No talk for Tammy today. We'll do that next time. But this is going to wrap up part 1 of the attacking free transfer talk. We've covered strikers. We're now going to discuss midfielders probably. I'll let the chaps take the lead in part 2. But to hear that, if you haven't already, go subscribe to the Attacking 2 podcast and catch up with the next part of this episode. Thanks, guys.